We want to also engage our panelists who are already here, but before we do that, also a tender reminder on what we're asking you this morning, and this is in regard to voter material security. And we are asking you this morning, how confident are you in the security of election materials? How confident are you in the security of election materials? Our top story, of course, was that particular story from Italy, where the integrity of the ongoing voter registration has been put to test after police recovered voter registration materials believed to have been stolen from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. We have all panelists already here in the studio. We have Senator Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who is a senator from Kisumu. We have Alice Wahome, from Member of Parliament from Kandara. Also, we have Dr. Shemo Chwodo, who is the global leader of Global Diaspora Alliance. Also, we have Kenya Diaspora Alliance, I should say. Also, we have with us Mr. Dan Mazo, who is a Member of Parliament from Makueni. Good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Morning.
Right, thank you for joining us. And we want just to get straight into it and looking at the voter registration materials. Let's begin from there, but I think it will always, or will be remiss if we don't start also with Senator Juma. And of course, we know that he'll be buried today. Let's hear from you, Senator Anyang' Nyong'o. First of all, did you know him personally?
Yes. First of all, let me extend my condolences to the family of my friend Boy Juma Boy. I have known Boy Juma Boy since the 7th Parliament in the 90s, when he was the chief whip for the governing party, KANU, and was in the opposition myself, first as a member on Ford Kenya. Since then, we have been friends. In fact, I remember at one point in the 7th Parliament, a minister was met him making some explanation of a point, I can't remember what. And I told the speaker that I didn't think that we could be sure of the minister's modula oblongata. And Boy Juma Boy found that a very interesting expression. I never had it. So from then on, we have been calling each other modula. Every time he sees me, then modula, how are you? And I reply. So he was a very jolly man. We shall miss his oratory, both on in public when we had rallies anywhere in the Kenya, and in Parliament, in the Senate in particular, recently. I mean, Boy Juma Boy could hold the Senate in awe as he spoke extremely poetic Swahili. It wasn't difficult to understand. I mean, everybody understood, but the way in which Boy spoke Swahili was exceptional. He had a sense of humor, and he could make fun of almost anything and ridicule anything in a poetic way. I think he was a very charming man. Outside the chambers of the Senate or Parliament, Boy was always very down to earth.
Yes.
Both in his life and in his relationship with people. So it is really a big blow, both to the family, the people of Kwale, and the opposition as a whole, and Kenya as a nation. We have been very unfortunate in the Senate that we have lost almost systematically 3 very powerful senators.
Yes.
First, Senator Mutula Kilonzo, and then Senator Tieno Makajwang, Mapambano, and now Boy Juma Boy. What is very strange is that Boy Juma Boy sat on the same in the same place to where, on the same seat to the seat where Tieno Makajwang used to sit. And of course, when Makajwang's son came, the new senator from Homa Bay, he sat in his father's chair. And they've been sharing that space behind me in the Senate. May God rest his soul in eternal peace.
Amen. And maybe if we may drill deeper, how will this change the dynamics of the politics? Now that we're getting up towards general election, then we have this particular demise of Juma Boy Juma. Do we have then a by-election?
I don't think so. I have a feeling that because the elections are so near, I've not checked the Constitution very carefully. But practically, just talking practically, I don't, because see, for there to be a by-election, the Speaker must declare that the seat is vacant, which obviously it is. And then the Electoral Commission must begin the process of compiling or using the old voters' list. And just the process of, I don't know that Senator Dan Manzo must be passed with the electoral process.
Yes.
But just practically, I find it extremely it would really be difficult for the people of Kwale to be campaigning and voting for a senator, and people to be campaigning for party positions and nominations and so on. I think it's going to make the work of the Electoral Commission very difficult, and the work for the people of Kwale very difficult. So maybe we shall get clarification from the Electoral Commission. But we were talking about it yesterday with some of my friends when we had the news, and we thought that for a coalition it would be a nightmare for us. For the people of Kwale it would be very difficult. And I think for the Electoral Commission it would sort of present practical problems that are not easy to disentangle. I think for us we have lost an extremely important point man in Kwale as a campaigner, and the coast as a whole, because Juma Boy was a gem. He could draw people like a spark, and I think that is something that we're going to miss.
So we are not, being the country that we are today, we, of course, with the progressive constitution, everyone is becoming a litigant right now on any, sort of issues that maybe they think is not in rhyme with the constitution. Do you think also this will be maybe a spawning ground for litigants to walk to court and say, of course, why has the speaker not maybe declared that this particular seat vacant just a few months shy to the general election?
Under the law, up to 90 days to the election, you can't have a by-election. But 90 days, but any other days before that, you can have a by-election. But the question is the practicality of the same. Now that by next month, political parties will go into nominations. So within the law, you can elect another senator. But you'll be elected, because you see currently, Parliament is not dissolved. It just adjourns. So Parliament actually will be running, and Senate, Parliament, National Assembly and Senate will be running up to 8th of August. Sorry, 8th of August
Yes.
this year. And therefore, what's the practicality? That's the question. But within the law, you can elect another senator, and then it means you'll complete an election and then begin another
one.
election immediately.
Which does not make really,
It
economic-wise, doesn't
Yes.
make sense at all.
Yes.
Dr. Shemichodo.
Debal, I come from a culture where you don't discuss positions while people haven't been buried. I think to be fair to the people of Kwale and Kenyans in general, and the family in particular, let Honorable Senator be buried today, and then maybe tomorrow we can discuss those other issues. But allow me on behalf of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance to record our condolences. About 2 months ago, when we were privileged to present before the Honorable Senator Amos Wako, Honorable Senator Mutai Kagwe committees on electoral technologies, Honorable Juma Boy was there, eloquent as usual, but also very welcoming to the ideas from the diaspora. He'll be greatly missed, and may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Right. Let's hear from also Alice. And welcome back. You're away in South Korea. We missed you.
Thank you
Good
very
to see
much,
you.
Kibaro. Yes, South Korea is it's a good country. It's a young democracy like Kenya.
How are they receiving the new acting president?
I think it is basically a quiet country, and I did not interact a lot with politicians, but the people I interacted with, especially the association of the World Association of Elections Board, and also the National Elections Commission of that country. I think there is anticipation. Either way, they are ready for whichever way the issue will go, and they would be having an election this year if finally the impeachment goes through. Of course, the court process is not over, but most of it is politics. I want to say that I want to give my condolences to the family of Juma Boy. I don't know him myself. I haven't interacted with him, but he succeeded his father as a parliamentarian
Yes.
in Matuga constituency, and therefore as a parliamentarian, former parliamentarian, I would want to give condolences to his family, to the people of Matuga, and of course to the entire coast region and Kenyans that knew him and that he served. From the description that his family gives, he is a likable, jolly, very jovial person throughout his life, and simple and humble. And therefore, of course, the service he has rendered to the country and the people of his region is obviously going to be something that will be missed. And his death appears to have been a sudden death, so there was no any signal or preparation. So the family must be hurting. We want to condole with them this particular time. Having said that, I think it's an electioneering period. Let's go into the issues.
Yeah, let's go into the issues. And one of the issues is also the security of election materials.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the top of the hour, we were just doing a story and following up the story of the election materials that were discovered in Isli. And this also questions the integrity of ongoing voter registration, which has been put to test by this particular development. Maybe we can begin with you, Shemo Chwotho. First of all, I think for the people of diaspora, you got the short end of a stick, so you think, because of what IBC gave as a ruling. Not really a ruling, but I don't know how to put it. Yeah, that Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania,
Right, and South Africa.
Are the only diaspora voters.
And Uganda.
And Uganda that are going to be registered.
And we are heading to court this week.
You're heading to court
for
this week.
contempt.
Right.
Because clearly it's very unfair to the diaspora. And we already giving notification to the leaders on the political divide that we're waiting to hear what they would say. If they dare travel abroad in this period before the elections, we want to hear what they'll say while they're out there. Because while they're back here, none of them, none at all, has come out to say what they say when they go out there, that you are my 40th county, you my richest county, we can't ignore you. But that's a story for another day. Yes. In terms of the BVRs found in Pangani, I must compliment the people of Isili that stayed vigilant and ensured they caught these culprits. I'm looking forward to a speedy trial of this matter so that whoever is culpable is brought to pay for the consequences, and not only the people who are arrested, but the masterminds more particularly. I hope we'll be able to get the masterminds. I hope also IBC will take the opportunity. You know, the question that has been lingering in the minds of Kenyans is, last year we had 15,000 BVRs. Now we only have about 8,000. As a technical person, I'm really wondering, where are the other half? So far, IBC has not come out to explain where they are. I think it's important, it's incumbent upon them to come out and explain. Could this be some of the BVRs that are now being misused? So I would want to challenge the law enforcement agencies to get deep down to this matter so that the credibility of the elections are not in question.
All right. So let's hear also from Professor about the voter registration.
Well, I think one thing bad that we have learned from this voter registration exercise is that the government has been contravening a very important principle in the Constitution, which are Article 1 on the sovereignty of the people. And Article 1 says, very important, all sovereign power, all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through their democratically elected representatives. Those are the first two articles of the Kenyan Constitution. And then we come to elections, and we find the same Constitution which says that any Kenyan who has achieved the age of 18 has the right to vote. And then the government proceeds to deny them that right to vote by not providing them the identity cards, which is the card they need to register as voters. Because without the ID, you can't get the voting card. Which means that from al ab initio, right from the very beginning,
yes,
the government has contravened those two very important principles of the Constitution. I think that from this particular experience, we must, from now, because in this election we will not enforce it. You can see that from the ground we are still saying that students who have reached the age of 18 in high schools all over the country have not received the ID. In fact, we were shocked after the first week that the biggest problem in our county, Kisumu,
Yes.
were not people getting ID, registering the voters, was ID. I even met a 56-year-old woman who didn't have the ID. And it's all over, which means that from now on, that mischief must be cured. My proposal is the following. When we were in the coalition government, there was a plan to have a one-stop card for everybody in Kenya. You have an ID where you have your driving license, your ID, your voting card, your health insurance card, i.e., I think Shemo Chula will tell you about that. So that you don't need to be collecting all kinds of documents to exercise your, or to enjoy your right as a Kenyan. So I think from now on, in the coming election after this one, it must be mandatory that when people are going to vote, you already have your voting card. And from the records held by the Register of Persons, you should release to the Electoral Commission that people are qualified to vote. You don't need to register them because they are there. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So if, let's say, we want to check whether people have died or not, those records should be there. The registrations of persons, if you have a proper system of government and somebody has died, a death certificate is issued, it is taken to the registration of persons, and that person is immediately deleted from the list of people alive in Kenya who are qualified to vote. So I think this exercise we're involved in is unconstitutional, actually. And I think if we're going to respect the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, we should move to another plane of identifying people who can vote.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Mazo.
Yes, first of all, my condolences to the family of Juma Boy, Senator. You know, he was renowned for supporting and promoting Swahili language,
yes,
especially in the floor of the House, and I think that is something we'll all miss. And then condolences to his family and the constituents of Kwale County. I want to say the matter of elections now and the registration, the biggest challenge is cleaning up of the voters' register. There has been a lot of allegations, and now some of them are coming true, that last time the vote in Mandera was very unusual, and especially when we are doing the election petition, and some of those allegations, now we are beginning to see, you know, what was being prepared. And I think the electoral body should take this matter very seriously. There has been allegation that when people return their death certificates, and they are supposed to, you know, IDs of deceased person are supposed to get death certificates. You know, you surrender the ID. These IDs have been, some of them are said to have been missing or cannot be accounted for. And you know, the person who receives them and issues a death certificate is a registration bureau. And therefore, it would be very sad if somebody is already scheming or planning to steal the election, or making people to, you know, to vote who are not supposed. And therefore, cleaning of voter register is very important. The use of technology is very important because of identification by the thumb. That will make sure a lot of dead voters don't vote, and will make sure that the election is not stolen. You know, rigging of an election starts many months before the election. It doesn't happen on the election day only.
Yes.
And therefore, the electoral body must get very serious. Today, Parliament, the delegated committee, which I'm a member of, is sitting to make the regulations of the election law today and tomorrow. And this has already delayed because it is through the regulations you are able to know what to do or what to legislate to make sure that there is free and fair election.
Thank you. Let's hear from Alice, because also there's bugbears and fears among the Jubilee fraternity that once we have this voter cleaning exercise done, that yes, the numbers of the Jubilee strongholds are likely to reduce because we have a lot of dead
Let me
voters
first,
who are registered.
Allow me to first go back a little to the question of whether there will be by-elections in Kware.
Yes.
Yes, there will be by-elections in Kware.
There will be.
Yeah, there will be, because we have, if you look at even the remaining period of 6 months, definitely the county requires representation. You will know that even the budget for the next year will actually 2017-2018 will be prepared this particular period before August.
But don't you deem it to be very injudicious and impractical?
The IBC is supposed to be ready even for by-elections. And as long as the law, the constitution requires, actually the speaker is supposed, I believe, maybe we could check on the specific days, he's supposed to give the writ within 30 days of the vacancy, and then by-election to happen in 60 days, not 90 days. So the total is actually then going to be 90 days. And we have more than, we have roughly now about 6 months or slightly less than 6 months. So there will be a by-election. The IBC cannot, it's already preparing for the national general elections. And this is a small question, considering the only issue is that there will be a bit of a nuisance for the people of Kwale, but it is something that they have to do. It's their responsibility to produce a senator, and I'm sure there are people already.
Welcome back. You're watching This Is a Point here on AM Live. Of course, we are discussing voter registration and the ongoing also voter registration in regard to security of election materials, and the integrity of the ongoing voters registration has been put to test after police recovered voter registration materials believed to have been stolen from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. 3 people were arrested in relation to the same crime, as residents obviously claimed that a BVR kit is among items that were recovered. According to the IBC, the 3 men were nabbed with voter registration forms, transfer forms, as well as black books, I should say, with voter details. The residents maintain there was a BVR kit that the suspects allegedly working for a politician from Mandera were using to not just transfer but also to register voters. While efforts to trace the missing kits are ongoing, the IBC is warning politicians against using illegal ways of swelling the voters' register. The 3 suspects are expected to be charged, I should say, in court this week. Of course, that also acts as a segue to a discussion here with our panelists. I'm holding court this morning with Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, who is a senator from Kisumu. Alice Wahome also, she is a member of parliament from Kandara. Also, we do have with us Dr. Shemo Chodho, who is the global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance and also member of parliament from Kweni. This is Dan Marzo. Right, in light of that, before we took a short break, we had from you as well, Alice, I hope you've not lost your track of thoughts regarding security.
Okay, then a quick one back to the question of when we can hold a by-election. After a vacancy occurs, the Constitution actually says the Speaker must give notice within 21 days of the vacancy arising. That is Article 101.
Within 21 days? Within
21 days. There will be an announcement by the Speaker, notice by the Speaker to his party and to the general public. And then by-election within 90 days. So, and then, but you cannot hold a by-election within 90 days from the general election. So you see, we are still far from the general election. So 3 months to the general election, you cannot do a by-election. So, but basically, maybe what will happen is that after whoever will be elected, then automatically, possibly, they will be re-endorsed because it is really about 5 to 6 months. So we fall within the period that a by-election will occur. Security of material, I think one of the key materials or important materials in any election is the voter register.
Yes.
And that is what is going on now, registering every Kenyan to be a voter. But of course, voting is a choice. We are encouraging, we are supporting, but people still have a right to vote or not to vote. It's not, the right is there, you decided you take the right to vote. And that is why registration to be a voter cannot be automatic for now unless we change the law. I'm responding to the issue of that the voter card should be automatic. Possibly it should be automatic, but then you make the choice of whether to actually vote or not. So that then it means we need to integrate, we need to synchronize our national registration data, the personal registration data, together with the voter register. So that upon attaining 18, automatically when your ID is produced, it becomes also the same number that you vote with. In Korea, South Korea, that is what happens. And I know we were looking forward to that, and that's why the biometrics. Right now, when you use your ID into the voter register, you will be able to produce. Just the ID is enough to help you to vote. You don't need then another card. So we hope to move towards that. And I think, therefore, the authenticity, the validity, the cleanness, the sanctity of the register spells out the question of that right, so that you are not denied to vote because you did not register for reasons that you don't have an ID and you have applied for it and you have attained the age. I think as a government, there is work there to be done.
Yes.
And especially in production, the production period of the identity card. And that's why, for me, I think as you get born, as you register, but of course not every Kenyan that is born in a hospital. So then again, Kenyans will need time or take time to take the data so that you are captured at birth.
All right.
Then finally, I think the case for Isli, I listened to Chiroba, and I think his issue was that there is no BVR that was recovered, but there were certain materials that are recovered. But you cannot actually attribute that necessarily to the institution, but there must be some elements that either are producing...
Excuse me, what do you mean you cannot release?
I think the investigations are ongoing. The material themselves, what material are they? I'm not sure. If they are actual IBC material, you know, also people produce materials and even print ballot papers. So we need to be very careful. Right now, we don't have ballot papers yet.
But isn't it maybe worrying a bit that hardly even a fortnight has passed, then we have another BVR kit, or supposedly election material
found or something?
Yes, found.
It should worry. It should
something,
send
yes?
signals. Our antennas should be alert, because every candidate actually is interested in a proper, clean register, a proper, clean, transparent by-election. I have received a lot of complaints also, even like from my own constituency, that people going to register, there is a candidate who actually is sending his agents there to give money as you come in to register as a voter.
All right.
You know, and
we'll get to that, because I think also you expressed frustration with that.
Yes.
Honorable Anyang' Nyong'o, we'll come to that.
But I just wanted to add a little to what Alice is saying. Alice is right. Article 101 says that in the case of the Senate,
yes,
the respective speaker shall, within 21 days after the occurrence of the vacancy, give notice in writing of the vacancy to the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, and a by-election shall be held within 90 days of the occurrence of the vacancy, subject to clause 5. And clause 5 is now the restrictive clause, which says that a vacancy referred to in clause 4 shall not be filled within the 3 months immediately before a general election.
Yeah.
So now if you take 3 weeks from today, because, I mean, from tomorrow, the Senate is convening tomorrow.
No, from the occurrence.
From the occurrence of it, okay.
Yes, yeah.
And then, let's say the Senate Speaker gives notice 3 weeks. 3 weeks takes us to the end of February, really. First week or second week of March.
First
week of March. And then if you work backward from the 8th of August, so that the election is not held 3 months before.
It is May, somewhere in May.
Is it somewhere in May? So that means that the Electoral Commission will have only about 6 weeks to do this. That's what.
You see, the vacancy has occurred not within the 3 months from. So.
No, but you see, the by-election cannot be held according to clause 5 in Article 101. A vacancy referred to in clause 4 shall not be filled within the 3 months immediately before the election. That's what Dan and I were saying. Yes, by law, if you go strictly by law, you can squeeze that election in those 6 weeks, the window of opportunity between the end of the notice,
so it
the
may
3
not,
weeks.
So there is a practicality problem.
Thing, printing ballot papers, whatnot.
Because it will then fall within 3 months to
to the thing.
General election.
And mind you, the political parties are expected in this general election to submit their candidates by the 31st of April for election, so that the Electoral Commission begins that whole process.
I think it's interpretation.
I think the law should not, here is where the Bible is right. The law was made for man and not man for the law. So I hope that...
So they could count backwards, and see that it will fall within 90 days from elections.
So that's what we're saying. So I hope that the people of Kwale and the family will not be put under undue stress.
So this is not the law of the Medes and the Persians that is cast in stone. We can always amend it.
No, well, let's wait and see. As Shem said, maybe Shem's advice is the best. Let's hold our horses.
Yes.
Let's hold our horses for the time being. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
In terms of the register and the smart card and the credibility of the elections, you know, one would say in a situation where about 30% of eligible voters are deliberately disenfranchised, structurally left out, would that election still be credible, free and fair in any circumstance? I say 30%, fully aware that about 15% of them are diaspora who were disenfranchised. The other 15%, I remember in the 8th Parliament, towards the tail end of that Parliament, there was an attempt to come up with a bill to make sure that every Kenyan has an ID. We did recognize then, and it's still a case, where young, newly married women were required to go back to their parents and so on and so forth to get IDs. Also, people in the border towns, border districts.
Yes.
The scrutiny that was required was so much that it wasn't really easy. It's like it's structured in such a way to deny Kenyans the inalienable right to get national identification. And I'm a bit concerned in all this debate that it's IBC coming out to talk about national IDs, even when people are talking about double registration IDs. I have not, NRB, the National Registration Bureau, is completely quiet. I thought it's them to come out to clarify, because this is their domain. So the aspect of national ID, and I want to make a passionate appeal to the honorable members of parliament here, that perhaps this is something that needs to be looked into. If it's not the current parliament, the next parliament, the aspect of ensuring that every Kenyan that has come of age has got the national identification. I estimate it could be even more than 15% currently, who deserve to have but don't have. But allow me also to make an appeal. I'm glad to hear from Mheshimiwa Danzo that the regulations, electoral regulations, are being discussed by the Assembly today and tomorrow. I'm hoping when they come for discussion, they will ask IBC what criteria it's using to only permit diaspora in Africa to vote. What about the United States, where the majority of Kenyans are? What about UK? At a very minimum, as Kenya Diaspora Alliance, we've made that submission to IBC. Can we at least have those two countries? Then we can take the comfort that this is progressive. Because short of having US and UK, where we know there are a majority of Kenyan diaspora, we certainly are going back to court. And that could, whatever that's going to come out with, in terms of mandamus, as the lawyers would say, if IBC is going to be compelled, we're not only going to talk about presidential, because the Supreme Court said it's not only presidential. We will be demanding much more. But as a compromise, we are saying, okay, can we take only presidential? But at least give us, show Article 83, which says maximum administrative effort will have been done to ensure people register to vote. Finally, on this regard, Debal, Excellency, the President talked about people being allowed to register with waiting cards. That's illegal. And I'm just wondering who advised the President on this regard. I was glad that IBC CEO came out to repudiate that you must have a national ID or a passport. Of course, I remember, I think it was 2007 or 2013, there was law that allowed people to register temporarily with waiting cards, but I think that law was banned from our statutes, and therefore it's not legal. But of course, as everybody is saying, can IBC give a little more time for people to register. I think that would be an ideal thing to do, but we also like the fact that there are very tight timelines. But moving forward, this 30% Kenyan eligible voters, both within and outside the country, we must find a way to bring them within the bracket to elect their leaders.
And of course, we understand also the courts have compelled IBC to give an election or voter registration card to a certain lady that went to courts. I can't remember her name.
Okay.
Right, to really protest that. That is unfair for IBC to actually have a deadline of that is so soon she's not received a card yet.
Sure.
Should also that really act as maybe you know, an opening ground to so many people who are frustrated, especially on the frontiers of this country, where they have to maybe do rigors of inspection and you know, investigation if they're truly Kenyans or not. Let's hear from you, then Mazo, then we'll come to Prof.
You know, there's been a problem of issuance of ID cards, especially on the border residents. People
Yes.
live where Kenya borders other countries.
Yes.
But recently also the president issued an order that IDs could be processed in 3 days, and a lot of people, you know, got IDs from certain regions and others did not. So there must be, you know, equity, so that everybody is treated fairly and the same. And therefore, the deadline of IBC, most of them are guided by law and are very hard to change. Just like the way we cannot change the election date because it is by the Constitution of Kenya. Most of their deadlines are like that. But where the IBC does a meeting or consults with the stakeholders who are political parties, then for good reasons they can extend the deadline. The biggest interest in this is the financing, of which we have done very good financing from Parliament for them, and we can also be able to adjust to make sure the reason people are some of them will be disadvantaged is not because of finances, because IBC is properly financed. So I think instead of the chair, you know, just without consultation says we can't. It should be open to consultations, maybe extend with a week or two. I am aware that a lot of Kenyans have lost their IDs either through robberies or something like that. And it's good to appeal to Kenyans that if you see a misplaced ID, you can give it to one of the media houses. You know, the ID of a person shows where they come from. Even if it's a local media station, I'm sure with an announcement, those people will still get a chance to register by tomorrow. But should IBC not be willing to negotiate at all, then I think it is important all Kenyans of good will come out today and tomorrow and register those who haven't, because I'm sure there are very many Kenyans who for one reason or another never got a chance to register by the deadline tomorrow.
Right, Prof.
I think what I would say in brief, in terms of voting and having ID and voting card, it is state failure really, because the Constitution is very clear, said Parliament shall enact legislation for the continuous registration of citizens as voters. Citizens as voters. Continuous registration.
Yes.
Whether citizen is residing in New York or Kuala Lumpur, he's a citizen.
True.
And they will be registered as voters continuously. This is in the Constitution. And Parliament was expected to enact a law. Parliament didn't enact a law.
So it's failure of Parliament.
No, Parliament did.
No.
There is a law.
There is a law.
There is a law already.
It's continuous.
It's continuous.
It's
So
continuous.
this is actually a
Yeah,
failure from IBC.
So it is not that IBC, the state, because IBC is a body entrusted by the state
to
to register voters.
Correct.
Now IBC must then be given the capacity and the capability to do that.
Yeah.
IBC doesn't have an office in Kuala Lumpur or in New York.
True.
So it is upon the state to say, here is a state organ that must continue registering people. How is it going to do it? This was a law enacted by Parliament that government should obey. So suddenly before an election, then it is said there's going to be massive registration of voters. Nowhere in the Constitution or the law is there provision for massive registration of voters. What is there is continuous registration of voters.
Sure.
And the ascertaining that when the voting is held, every citizen over 18 exercises its sovereign right as enshrined in Article 1 and 2 of the Constitution. These things are very clear. When it comes to diaspora, the same Constitution says the Parliament shall act like this for the progressive registration of citizens residing outside Kenya and the progressive realization of this right to vote. Now, if the progressive registration as presented by Shemo Chwodo has not been done, then two institutions must be held responsible. The state, no, Parliament did its work. The state
For diaspora.
and IBC.
Correct.
You see, these are the two organizations that should go before a court of law and say, why have we not implemented the Constitution?
Correct.
Now, coming around and asking MPs and parties and so on to begin doing something is actually giving a responsibility they don't have in the Constitution. In fact, I felt very badly when I was out there in my county, going around, finding out whether IDs have been given, whether they have been delivered by chiefs. This is not my responsibility as a member, as a senator. But the state has failed to do so. So we must go there and help our people. This should not now be taken as a recipe for the future. This the thing we're doing now, rushing around and getting, that should not be a recipe for the future. Now the state should wake up and say, how do we be faithful as a state to the Constitution? And how do we capacitate the IBC to fulfill its function as a body given the responsibility by the Constitution? And I think that let's not run around this thing. It should now be put very clearly. The mistake has been done. It is a terrible experience as far as I'm concerned, but it should not be repeated again in the coming years.
Thank you. And I just want to read a tweet also from Quincy. And he's saying, apparently, my dad can't register. He's been turned down several times, I think, or severely for his ID mismatch. How? This is what he's asking, is from Dagoretti South. Also, Ezekiel is saying that I think there are self-created loopholes in Kenya for rigging and other crimes to take place. This should be dealt with. Those are some of your reactions there. Let's hear from Shemo Chwodo.
Yeah, Debal, just briefly, Professor Senator Nyang raises a very important point. Article 82 of the Constitution talks of progressive realization of those diaspora rights. But of course, it's countered by Article 83. Part of why we're going back to the court is to seek advisory opinion. Is it enough when the IBC, in the last elections, we did 4 countries, or we purported to do 4 countries, and now we are adding 1 country? Theoretically, it may be about more than 100 years before we get to all countries of the world. We want the court to determine whether it's progressive. Is this what progressive means?
Yes, you're right.
Because we would have thought IBC would have indicated that we don't have sufficient resources. Yet the government, no higher than the president, has said we'll give IBC the support they need to make sure no Kenyans are disenfranchised. But also multilateral partners have said if it's funding that's the problem, we can talk to IBC. So what is it that's making IBC not to go beyond Africa? This is why we are suggesting, and I'm making a passionate appeal to Parliament, that at a very minimum, if you give us, in addition to Southern Africa, that's South Africa as well as Namibia / Botswana, where we have embassies, give us also to outside Africa. Then we can say, okay, this is progressive enough, at least where there are 35% or 40% of Kenyans in the US and in the UK. So we live with that. Then the next election cycle, we see where else we can go to.
Right, right. And don't you think then this is very unfair as well? When we hark back to 2013, we had the same thing happening, that the diaspora voter registration never happened, despite the fact that, yes, we were told, yeah, there are arrangements, there are plans, then they were locked out completely. So is there a deliberate attempt from the government to not really register the diaspora voters? Because, first of all, we had the reconfiguration, we had the foreign policy being reconfigured, right? And diaspora was largely also dropped into this new foreign policy. So what is really happening that now they're saying we'll drop into this particular, and how do they even come to select these particular countries that were given? Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa. Yeah, and you're saying also maybe Namibia.
Right.
I think the diaspora have been engaging IBC. And for sure, I'm sure they have an answer, at least as to why possibly they have not been able to move beyond the countries that were listed before.
But should we not establish, first of all, it is their right? They should not be pushing the envelope as their right now.
Nobody would argue that it is not their right. But I think we must also, because Professor here says we must capacitate or give capacity to IEBC, because it's the institution, not the government. The government will capacitate by possibly getting the budget from the House, because the National Assembly also has to provide sufficient budget, itemized and provided for that particular registration, for example. But we must also look at where IEBC is and where it has come from, because as an institution, was there any major work that they could have carried out? I mean, even the decisions so far they have made have been queried in terms of whether actually for the last 1 year, whether they were constitutionally and properly constituted. You know, we kept on battering the organization, the institution. So for me, and I'm not giving an excuse to them, I think we must also be practical as to how much they could manage to do with now a new commission that has just taken office.
We had allegations, Honorable Dan Mazo, first of all, that yes, we had registration which was ongoing in the United States. Yes. And of course, the Kenya consulate there was actually heading this registration of, or giving out the IDs to Kenyans in the diaspora.
Yes.
So was this an exercise in futility? That right now, they don't seem now to really follow up with that particular registration?
Part of that, first of all, shows disorganization and wastage of public funds, because you know that exercise costs the country quite a bit of money. Then all of a sudden it stops. What we need to be careful is that to make sure that whatever happens in the diaspora, that there's no rigging of elections. So long as that is taken care of, then I think the diaspora can vote. And so long as it is well controlled and these people are known, it's very viable, and the registration there forms part of the registration in Kenya and is very well. Then I think there's no problem if it can be verified.
Thank you.